Hey guys, welcome to the High Ticket Coaching and Consultant Strategy and Growth Show. Now, if you're watching this interview anywhere else but within our private community called High Ticket Client Attraction Insider Circle, then we'd definitely love to come have you join us. So today I want to introduce you to one of the members of our community, Gio Salvo. So Gio, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm pretty excited to be here.
Awesome, love it. So tell us, Gio, what is it that you do?
Now I'm in financial services. I've been in financial services for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
The industry in general, I guess the best way to describe it would be insurance, investments, debt, financial game planning. Not traditional though. I really spend a lot of time based building relationships with clients. I think that's the missing link in a lot of what happens in related to finance.
Yeah. Okay, so perfect financial services.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess what got you interested in that?
Well, at 41 years old, I realized I didn't have a game plan. I owned a small business with my parents. It's 1990. At 20 years old, I was working in it. And right after the recession, I realized that there's got to be a better way to do things. And so as I started to research and find stuff, I recognized that owning a business and believing to sell it one day was not a good financial plan. So as I started to learn the tools of finance, I realized that, I needed to learn it for myself and help others. But what happened was, as I started talking to other business owners, I realized that most people didn't really have their game plan set up. And I started falling in love with the aspect of just talking people through it and getting them to the game plan that they wanted to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you say in terms of most business owners, most individuals who do start their business, you said most of them don't have any type of game plan for what's next. Is that right?
Yeah, as a small business owner, we always believed, or my family, we'll sell the business when we get older, and that's not a good strategy, especially now how technology and things change so quickly. The business you own may not exist by the time you get to retirement. So we never had a strategy for that, and that's not. And I realized personally that's what a lot of my friends that are former business owners and current business owners were doing. They just had a vision to sell what they were building. But again, I didn't see that as a good strategy, and I realized that there's other ways to do things, and that's kind of where this whole story started from. Was to fix what we weren't doing correctly.
Yeah. So how do you see? So do you see it in terms of? Do you believe that most businesses that are started today, entrepreneurs who do believe that okay, my goal is to sell it someday, you don't think that's viable? Which is most likely that business you don't believe it'll most likely be around or something?
I think it's two. One, when you have a business, obviously your biggest challenge is running the business, and it's always solving the next problem. And so it's almost like you have tunnel vision, and the let me fix, get to my future, or that plan for my future, or personal finance gets kind of pushed aside. And as things change, it always seems to be on the back burner. And I don't think that that's a strong strategy. Obviously it's not. And people are seeing now with, what happened in the pandemic, losing their business or maybe having their business put on pause, having something on the side or having a game plan that is more comprehensive makes the most sense. And so I just come at this from a very personal perspective, not from, a Harvard graduate, but for somebody that's been in the game, with some scars to prove it, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. So have you always been like, would you consider yourself an entrepreneur as well too, with growing up with your family and helping with the business and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a business literally built with one client at a time, and I saw it built on relationships. And so we finally sold the business after 29 years, and we had second generation buying from us. So I had always seen, the struggle, the success, all of it, and I fell in love with that. It's the only thing I've ever known.
Yeah, awesome. So what do you recommend for businesses, entrepreneurs, in terms of the financial services side? Is there anything you typically recommend for them?
Yeah, I would say this. Even though we get tied to our business and we fall in love with it and it becomes part of our DNA, the whole point of owning a business is having a future. And so I think it always starts from the going backwards. In other words, what is the goal? What do you want to achieve? What is the life you want? And then you build it backwards. And that recipe gets built into a business plan. So for example, let's just say, let's say an investment, an IRA, for example. That becomes an expense to the business. If I need to be saving X amount of dollars, that should be an expense so that your business is really funding your future. And I think that's important because then it's almost like you have two things working simultaneous, but it always starts going backwards from what you want to what you should have, to the current.
Yeah, awesome. So you're almost saying like start from where, go backwards. Most people, it seems like they're starting forwards or whatever, but start from that backwards and then working forwards.
I use this analogy a lot. This is the best way to describe it. It's like I like to cook. So if I go in the kitchen and I throw some stuff together, chances are it comes out good. But if it doesn't, I always have takeout. But that's just kind of like going to the kitchen winging it. What most people do is they wing it in their life. They get to the end or close to retirement, they realize it's not exactly what they wanted, but there's no do-over, there's no takeout, there's no second chance. So the idea is that if you have a recipe, so think about if you go to the kitchen with a recipe, chances are it'll come out good. Well, if you have a recipe for what you want in the future, then you could go backwards and figure out what the ingredients are in the time frames. And the ingredients would be, debt management, insurance, the right type of investments. So it's almost like, it's not counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you see it that way. And if you plan it out the right way, everything you do in according, as you go on, it's just you weigh it on a scale and you say to yourself, is this going to really help me in my future or hurt me? It's much easier to guide that way.
Yeah, awesome. So what do you think? How does it work with most entrepreneurs that maybe you've worked with and stuff like that? Do you find most individuals come to you when for your services when it's typically too late, or do you find that they come to you beforehand? How do you find it in the marketplace?
Well, too late is pretty much when you're 20. In other words, I think you should have a game plan set up when you're 18. Now, I mean, that sounds crazy, but think about a GPS. The farther distance you have, the more flexibility in the route that you have. So, when there's traffic and everything, you can take a lot of different courses. As you get closer to the end, it's much more difficult. So the same thing in life, money and investments and a financial plan is time-based. So the longer it takes to get to that plan and get it created, the much more difficult it becomes to change. So I like people in it. Now, when you're younger, of course, there's more flexibility, you have more challenges, but I like it early because it changes the perspective. It gives you something to fight for and to plan for. But is late to never? Late is when you're retired. Any day before your retirement is at least a day to plan something. So I just think that people who are early in the game, they put all their focus into the business. And I don't say that that's wrong, but there's got to be a portion carved out for at least a game plan of what it's supposed to look at least the architecture of that.
Mm-hmm. And what type of clients do you typically work with? Is it any type of business owner? Are there a specific size?
No, it's funny because it always goes back down to the individual. So you could be the owner of a company, you could be an employee. It always goes back to what you want personally, and then we bake it into the cake of what you're doing. So you could be an owner of a business that has 50 employees, or you could be the only employee. At the end of the day, is that business going to be able to provide you the income, or more importantly, is it going to provide you the lifestyle that you want in the future? And so it really always goes back to the personal. So it doesn't really matter at that point. What's happening, honestly, in the U.S. right now is the statistics are showing that people are living on between 95 and 100% of their income. It goes across gender, across race, across income levels and career. So if I sit with a doctor who's making 100 grand or a nurse making 50, the numbers kind of end up being the same because there's the income left over is not that dramatic. It's just that there's no game plan in place.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start with a game plan.
Yeah. So you said in terms of individuals, it's about, you said 95 to 100% they were living off of the income in a sense, you said?
Yeah, the U.S. statistics are showing that pretty much everybody's living on almost 100% of their income. So the visual of, well, if I make more money, I'll have more to play with. Yeah, all it does is it just your lifestyle levels up, and so there's really the same percentages left over. And so if you think about if you're making $50,000 a year, the lifestyle you're planning for in the future will probably be equal to the lifestyle you have. And so the savings needs to be in proportion to that. Same thing if you're making 100 grand. So at the end of the day, the numbers, the percentages are almost the same outside of careers. The problem is that without a game plan, you're not getting there anyway. And that's the fundamental difference is people will not, it's pretty much 90% of everybody we know will retire without enough income to live the life that they want to. 90%, unless they have a game plan and somebody coaching them. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. So it seems like you're really taking up on yourself to kind of go out to the marketplace and just educate individuals about this. I guess what's your vision? What vision do you have for what is that you do as far as just impacting the life of entrepreneurs, business owners?
Well, I mean, I have a special love for small business owners because honestly, they're the ones that they take it on the chin. They put everything on the line. They sacrifice their time, obviously money, family time for a bigger dream. And I see them, they work hard. If you know small business owner, if you are one, you know what I'm talking about. It's part of your DNA. And so what happens is I hate to see them lose. I want to see them win. I want to see them have like the struggle and the success. And the success means to live the way you want to live. I think when I talk to people about retirement, they give me words like, I want to be comfortable or financially free. And those words are kind of poetic. I think the word that people want is dignity. And the dignity means that you can do what you want, however you want, with whomever you want, with whatever it costs. And that means it has to be planned out. It's not going to happen magically. And so when most people that we know that are older, I say dignity, think about it. Most grandparents can't even take their kids to, all their great grandkids and their grandkids to the movies because it's too expensive, let alone a cruise or a vacation. And they've worked their whole life. But what's the case? There's been no plan in place. So the working hard part is probably not, it is important, but having a structured game plan is just as critical.
Mm-hmm. And I guess a lot of people are realizing that now with COVID-19, right? When it hits and it's like all of a sudden everything stopped, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's been a big, number one, because people have had time to think. But number two, life definitely slowed down. But also they realized how delicate things are and how some industries overnight disappeared. Now, some were created also. But I think they realized how fleeting it is. And anybody that's lived through the recession, so obviously I'm older, things changed very quickly. And it was like a bomb went off. So for people who haven't lived through it, so the younger entrepreneurs, this is their first taste of a giant course correction. And there's opportunities that are born from this, but there's also a pivot point. And there's also times where things have been destroyed. So I think having a game plan structured allows you to go, at least, okay, where am I missing the pieces and where can I adjust? But just winging it is not a good idea either, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what does a typical game plan look like? How does someone come up with a game plan?
Well, you kind of said in the beginning, you said it a few minutes ago, education is the first part. It's not telling somebody what to do. It's first off, how do things work? So in other words, how do interest rates work, in your favor and against you, which talks about investments, how insurance should work fundamentally, how to get out of debt faster, how to use the tools of finance to get out of debt so that it's not hurting you in the, going forward. Right now, there's a whole generation that are growing up with student loans that are, used to be what our mortgage payments used to be. And so how do we get out of debt faster? All of those things first come out. So I guess the first level is education. Let's get everybody on the same playing field, because there's a ton of information, obviously, in the digital age. The problem is there's so much of it now. It's how do I figure out what's right and what's wrong? That's number one. Second thing is when you build out a game plan, the game plan's got to adjust for a person's current situation and their future. So the analogy I always give is creating a financial GPS. Everybody has a starting point. What's the destination look like? And then again, I go back to those words, comfort and financial freedom. I need a destination. So in other words, if I put comfort, or let's say, for example, I use the GPS analogy and I go, I want to go north. And my GPS doesn't know where north is. Although we do know where it is, we don't know where we get there. Comfort is the same way, or financial freedom. I need a destination at a time. And so there's certain questions that I'll ask that'll tell me what that address is. And now if you think about, we always have a starting point. Today is today. Where's my financial placement is today? And this GPS will then allow us to look at and create milestones. How fast is it going to be to get out of debt, pay my mortgage and student loans off? How much money do I need to be investing to hit my goals and dreams? Do I need insurance? And if so, what is it? If I have kids, maybe there's a college plan. So now you start to get a comprehensive game plan instead of these individual pieces. And that's when the magic happens, when everything's kind of interlocking, because things affect each one affects the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great stuff. Because I know, just like you said, with information, it's like there's so much of it today. Like if you go online, where I'm not sure what the statistic is, where it's like every single minute or something, there's like so much data being pushed out there. So how does and how does someone overcome that, right? So how do you find that right information that you would need to be able to make a good decision?
That's exactly where the education comes in. So when I sit with someone and I go, here's how things work out. Number one, if I was just a sales guy and I just go to their game plan, whether they have it or not, and start picking things apart, I'm just a sales guy. And how do they verify whether it's true or not? I could be a guy that's trying to sell them something. But if I spend the first 20, 25 minutes educating, really explaining how things are supposed to work, then I can sit there and say, hey, look, you see why what you have here is not working right? Because it's wrong. It's wrong in these ways. Second thing is, if they don't have a game plan, as we start to go forward, every conversation we have is a level up to the next one. This is how investments work. Now, this is why you need this investment. This is how life insurance works and why it isn't what it isn't. For example, that's a whole nother conversation, but how does debt work? How can we go from being in debt for 25 years and using the same dollars being in debt for 9 years? And instead of me telling them, now we're on the journey together. So using the GPS analogy, not only do we create the plan, but now I get to ride shotgun, and there's accountability brought into it as well, because now I'm going to be a partner with you. But it's the constant coaching and educating them on the process. So when you have like you said, all this filter of information, now we can filter it through education and knowledge instead of just being told something. It's a huge factor in that, in the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah. How do you work with your clients, by the way?
Well, prior to COVID, it was very personal, like sitting in their homes normally. A typical meeting would be like this. We'd sit for 30 minutes and like I said, educate. Then maybe 30 minutes gathering data and information, all of their financial stuff to create this GPS. Come back a couple nights later or a week later and go over this game plan. So the GPS is typically a 25 to 30 page document, free, by the way, which is important. Really good insight in what they have. And inside of that is all the things they need to do. Now with COVID, it's changed things where I can be much faster. I'm still sitting with them, but I'm sitting in my house and they're sitting in theirs, and we're having a conversation. Probably they're in flip-flops and shorts, but it's the same conversation, the same education and breakdown, the same gathering of data, and then the same going through the process. And remember, this is not a one-night thing. This is a journey. If you're 30 years old, this is a 30, 35-year journey. Life is going to change. Life is going to throw traffic at you. But if there is a co-pilot and there's a game plan, we can get through. And think about how many people wish they had that 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff. So the next question becomes, in terms of the next step. Let's say someone says, "Okay, this makes total sense." What do you typically recommend as a next step for someone?
It goes back to the education. Like I said, I would probably say, let's have a meeting. And when I educate someone, it also is a BS filter. Does this guy know what he's talking about? Has the advice I've been given been correct? A lot of people get advice from Uncle Joe, who's watching 8 minutes of YouTube videos, and he's the resident guy in the family that knows everything. That's what you're going to base your game plan on. It's kind of scary. And so the first thing goes back to, if I'm talking and I'm making sense to you, that's the first thing. Because again, the relationship is probably most critical. If I'm the one that's going to be on the journey with you, you have to vibe with me. You have to be comfortable with how I talk, how I do things, and vice versa. When it comes to thinking about being around someone for that long period of time. So the first night is all about that. And if they feel comfortable, which usually I would say majority do, we'll go forward with the next step. And that's important. It's really about the relationship part. It's disingenuous for me to think I can throw a game plan at someone without knowing who they are and knowing their challenges and their goals and dreams, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the biggest thing in business as well. Because I know there's so many individuals, they only just either care about a sale or they just care about the end result, right? Versus totally trying to skip over the relationship, when you and I know relationship is where it starts. That's the beginning of any type of friendship, anything in life, right?
I was so lucky to see a business built with one guy at a time. Literally, a person would walk in our store, and I would see him every day for years and years and years. I would see their kids come in, and it's been in my DNA. So I didn't have to learn that, thank God. But I think that's the big missing link in business right now. People want the instantaneous result. I mean, we come from the microwave culture. You put something in the microwave for 2 minutes and it's ready, but that's not how everything else works. It's false. It also is not how you can build a business. If you build a business with just quick sales, you're building on a fake house. It will fall apart because there's no value. The value comes into it when you're able to connect with someone. And it doesn't have to be for a sale today. If you connect with someone the right way, you can ask for a really good referral, and they'll give you their best friend. They'll give you their parents, their friends, their sister, their brother, because there's true value brought to them. And the value doesn't have to be in selling them anything. Sometimes I see what people, I go, look, your stuff is right. You know how much business I get from telling somebody they're good? More than if I tell them it's not good, because they realize at that point that, okay, this guy's in this for the long haul. And I know it's going to sound corny, but I wish somebody, if somebody had talked to me like this in my 20s, it would have been game over. I didn't know this stuff. So people need someone to fight for them and to kind of push them a little bit in the right direction. And you can only do that based on a relationship, because then they know that the information is right, even if it's forceful. Hey man, you're not doing the right stuff. and they know that you're in their corner. So that's super important. Any business, anybody watching this, I would focus on relationships. The sales will follow you magically.
Hmm. I love that. So what type of businesses did you and your family run back in the day?
We sold automotive paint. So we were in the chemical side of the paint business. We didn't actually do the work, but we were on the color side and custom paint. And so I was always mixing paint and servicing body shops and collision centers, which is completely 180 degrees opposite of what I do. But in a sense, business is all about, solving a problem, but being a human being first. I always, in anything. So.
Mhm. Yeah, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I know one of my family members, same thing as well too. They painted cars and stuff like that. So we definitely did a lot of work with the going to the places where you actually do get the paint and stuff like that.
That was my life for many years. It was cool. It's hardworking people, and the crazy part is I would see all these business owners and they're all putting in 60, 70 hours a week, but they're not winning. And I looked at myself and I'm going, I'm not winning. There's got to be something missing it's not hard work. That's the missing link. Hard work was there. It was the fundamental game plan. It was understanding the rules. It's almost like people are playing basketball on a football field and going, why am I not scoring any points? You're playing the wrong game. And so money, I will say this because I think you'll resonate, especially the guys that are going to watch this. We have money in our hands every day, either credit cards or loans or cash, and people assume they understand how it works. And listen, I've driven a car my whole life. I have no idea how the engine works. And so I speak very honestly because this is not something, again, I've learned 20 years ago. This is a 5-year journey. So I've been on the other side of the fence rather recently.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. So the question now becomes, if someone wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to connect?
I would say email or even right now, cell phone. I mean, everything is text or email. So yeah, either one would be fine.
Okay, awesome. So what I'll do as well too, guys, if you're watching this, whether it's on the live or on the replay, I'll have the Gio's contact information right above or below this video. And you'll be able to click and connect directly with him. Well, hey, Gio, thank you so much for stopping by, man. Do you have any final thoughts before we end here?
I think if you're an entrepreneur, you got there's something inside of you that's special. There's a community of people. You're not on the journey alone. You got to run the miles by yourself. No doubt everybody has to run it. But when you're involved in a community of people, just the camaraderie, I mean, stay connected because it's like it'll amplify what you're doing. You're not alone. It's a long journey, but it's cool that you got partners in the fight.
Love it, love it. Well, thank you so much for stopping by, Gio. Appreciate you sharing this information.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, we will be in touch. Enjoy, okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. You're welcome.
Have a great weekend, guys.
You do the same.